That'll get you. Startled myself. Oh, well, thank you so much, Wendy and Julie. That was such a beautiful way to start our service. Good morning and welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. If you haven't noticed, it is Pajama Day today. The idea was for those of you who have been so used to hanging out in your pajamas and just clicking the Zoom link that maybe this would encourage you to say that you can come as you are in your PJs. So here we are today. I am the Reverend Lydia Ferrante Roseberry. I am the minister of this beautiful congregation, and I'm joined today by Service Associate Ilya Kowalchuk, Julie Morris and Wendy Nelson, who you've already heard today, and our tech team, Bill Beachley, Mary Hill, and Deborah Mensch. And of course, all of you here in person and those of you on Zoom. You are the beloved community. You are all welcome here today. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes and sizes, abilities and challenges that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. No matter what you're wearing, you're welcome here. And no matter how long you've been away or how soon you return, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart today or you come deeply troubled, you are welcome here. Everyone is invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. And each week we acknowledge that the land surrounding us is the stolen territory of the Arapaho people, and that many, many tribes roamed freely on this land for millennia before the arrival of white settlers. In this congregation, we commit ourselves to being a center for spiritual exploration and justice making, and to anti-racism and anti-oppression work within and beyond the walls of our congregation. If you are new here, we are so glad you found us, whether you've come in today or whether you're one of our Zoomies. And we hope that you can experience the love and warmth of this congregation. Each Sunday is different here, so please come back a few times to really get to know us and also check out what our opportunities are during the week. For those of you on Zoom, there'll be things going into the chat. And for those of you who are here, you can always go to the welcome table and people will help you learn a little bit more about this congregation and what we do, not on Sundays. Newcomers can find a QR code also if you're in here in the back of the hymnal that will help you get connected. Everyone here in this space is invited to stay and chat during coffee hour, being mindful of physical distancing. Masks may be taken off in the fellowship hall as you eat or drink, but in the nice weather, we encourage people to eat outside. And any service participants you see today with their masks off will have tested negative this morning for a COVID test. And we do ask everybody else in the sanctuary, keep your mask on, even while singing and speaking into the microphone. And we always like to know who's here. So if you're on Zoom and you're a visitor, you could just type your name and where you live in the chat. And if there's anybody here who would like to introduce themselves, if you could just let that be known and we'll pass a microphone and you can also just type your name and where you live. Well, it is good to be together. I know that can be a kind of awkward thing, so we wouldn't require it of anybody. It is very, very good to be together today. If you have a chalice at home, you are invited to light it And those of you in the room can share it with me in saying our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice, warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I'll sing our bowl again, and I want to invite you to let the sound of the bowl draw you deeper into the present moment and just see how long you can keep hearing the bowl. The next two elements of our service speak of fire as a metaphor and the paradox of fire and the two elements. I know fire, for us here living in this area, can be a kind of triggering concept. So if this is an uncomfortable space for you, please feel free. You can go out and talk to somebody in the lobby and come back later. And they speak to fire in two different ways. In the opening words, fire is the fire of destruction that is in our life and in our world that is our big challenge. And that'll be in a video. And then we'll be singing the fire of commitment, which is about the fire within that actually helps us rise up and provides the energy that we need to meet the challenges we see before us.
Everything is still on fire, despite your best efforts. In addition to living, it is clear that fire or not, you must level up in what it means to thrive. Right now, that means wrestling with the truth in the fact that everything is not all your fault. I am sorry that everything is still on fire. Once hate catches the winds of "not my problem" blow, and the blaze is hard to stop. But hard is not impossible. Not yet is different than never. You, in community, have an answer. You have a response to systems of power and control and to the cost of suffering. You and your community together are the answer. You are not only a people of flame, but also a people of cold, clear truth. You know both where you fall short and where you flourish, and where you still reach. Everything is still on fire, but all is not lost. You remain more nimble than steadfast, more unshakable than swayed by the latest rage. You are here to put out the ravenous flames and heal the world. Enough is enough.
We are going to be singing together from the Teal hymnal, number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. That is number 1028. Please do rise in body or spirit if you would like, and join me. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to
Good morning. When I got out of the car and was walking into the church this morning, I was feeling a little embarrassed. I was walking around in my robe and I just felt sort of not ready. And then about a couple hours later, I heard Wendy talk about those glorious pink and teal unicorn slippers. And she said, they're so happy to be out in the world. And it occurred to me that, yes, of course, like my robe is sort of relegated to the frumpy times of the day, and it never gets to be like proud. So own your sleeping clothes, or in some of our cases, early morning clothes. Several years ago, into my teaching career, I was in a great space. I was teaching 6th through 8th grade at the charter progressive school called Horizons K-8 in Boulder. And teaching here helped me envision what teaching could be like, free from the confines and restrictions of the school district bureaucracy, because we had our own charter. Side note, it's called Horizons because we wanted to give you the impression, teachers, students, parents, the whole community, that you weren't quite there, to keep pushing and learning and going further. And I was teaching content. I was building relationships. We were honoring differences and laughing together. Everything in my professional practice was clicking. In this particular year, with my class of 10 to 14-year-olds, we designed and constructed a large-scale mosaic that was designed to reflect the entire community. And one kid even came up with this idea of gluing and masking in shards of a mirror into the mosaic so that the viewer could then also see themselves as part of that community. I was leading these kids to powerful places. One of my new 6th grade students, Helen, she quickly became an important part of our class. And she was born with a genetic difference that caused one of her eyes to be malformed and differently colored, ineffective. Charismatic and self-assured, Helen quickly became that important part of our class, our community. She was loved by all, including me. And early in October, Helen and her mom came in to talk to me one day after school. Helen started off the conversation by thanking me for welcoming her into our class community. And she said that sometimes in new groups, she would get self-conscious and teased and laughed at because of her eye, people judging her. But she was so grateful that I had set a model of inviting and welcoming her and just treated her as a normal kid instead of glancing or staring at her bad eye. Of course, I replied, you're wonderful, and your presence makes our class so much better. But, Helen said, and suddenly I realized that her voice was breaking and that her mom gently put her hand on Helen's. It's really hard for me when you're sarcastic in class. I don't like it, I don't think it's funny, and it makes me feel confused and left out. I feel lost sometimes because I don't know if you're joking or not, and it makes me want to leave class. This young child, sensitive and articulate, gently escorted me off of my self-constructed podium. With great sadness and personal disappointment, I apologized to Helen profusely. I thanked her for her courage and honesty. And after fumbling for a bit, we worked out a way to move forward, which included not being sarcastic, and also, if it slipped out, which it so often does from me, saying that I was being sarcastic. I know, it defeats the purpose of being sarcastic, but in that situation, it was important. There was also included an unspoken message, important learning for me, that some of my students are still unable to decipher sarcasm, and for me to be mindful of that if I want them to feel brave and comfortable coming into and staying in my room. We are a diverse community that spans 10 decades. Some of us were raised without houses and no indoor plumbing. Others have watched YouTube on a cell phone since before they could speak. I believe that we are that mosaic, broken pieces and shards coming together to build something beautiful and inviting to look at. I also believe that we are doing our best to be welcoming and inclusive. And most importantly, I believe that we are aware of our imperfections, our desire to learn, to try again, and to give one another the benefit of the doubt. And keep opening our hands ever the wider. And I'm not being sarcastic. Each week we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives in this community by giving half of our plate away to those organizations that share our values. For the month of September, we are sharing our plate with the Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition. The Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition, or CSPC, was established in 1980 by a group of parents who wanted better for their children. Together they began learning and teaching others about their rights as parents and exploring effective ways to support their children's early development and education. Today, CSPC offers programs, courses, and other community resources that support schools, parents, students, and child care providers throughout all of Colorado. CSPC works hard to help close the achievement gap between the Latinx and white learning communities. Two powerful ways they do this is by developing parental engagement, as well as training and connecting tutors with Latinx students. Alma Palma, who led the programs of El Paso with the fellowship, Pat Bulthap and Bob Norris will host a table after the service to answer all your questions about how to participate with the many opportunities that El Paso has offered the future of CSPC. You can text your donation at the number on the screen, or if you're at the fellowship today, please place a donation in the offering plate as it passes. Please give generously, as you so often do. And as our musical reflection begins, we invite you to write into the chat or talk to your neighbor about this question. How have you learned to become more welcoming? Thank you.
for the work of the fellowship and for the work of the Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition, we dedicate our efforts and our offerings. As a child, Betty Troy loved to find solutions to problems. One afternoon, she and her brothers and her cousins wanted to have an overalls party. Do you know what an overalls party is? Everybody gets in their overalls and they party. They have a good time. That was her idea, an overalls party. 6 of them were together for that afternoon, and 5 of them had overalls, but her little brother didn't. Betty loved to solve problems, and so she came up with this design. He had a pair of jeans, and Betty's mom had scraps of fabric, and she found a fabric scrap. And so you can imagine what she did. She cut a square off. She got very creative, put loops in it so that the loops could go through the belt of his pants and the square, and then created straps going around. And ta-da! Her little brother had overalls. And he put them on, and they were all able to wear, to be at the overall party. She shares that story as the piece that got her into the work as an accessibility specialist, and now she works at Yahoo. She does user studies to identify how Yahoo itself can be more accessible, and internal mentoring, she says, to help spark interest in accessibility at Yahoo. I love this story because Betty, as a creative older sister, embodies 2 kinds of inclusionary practices. She uses both a medical model and a social model. The medical model asks, what's wrong with this person that needs to be fixed here? And how can we help this person have the accessible tools they need so they can fit into what we are offering, in this case, an overalls party? Betty, the problem solver, figured out how to make overalls so that her little brother could participate. The social model, however, asks, how do we make our spaces and our events more inclusive for everybody, including those with invisible disabilities? What barriers are here that those of us who are temporarily able-bodied might not even notice? Betty, the party host, didn't want to exclude anyone because they didn't have overalls, so she found a way to make overalls available for the person without them. Do you see the difference there in those 2 different models? So I can only imagine what she's doing at Yahoo. The same, of course, goes for other accommodations: hearing accessibility, ramps, an automatic door, visual aids, and the like. The medical model, for example, creates hearing aids for individuals. The social model adds hearing loops in rooms so those with hearing aids can hear better. Has a process which we have where everybody in a large group speaks into a mic. And we're talking a large group over like 6 or 8 people to aid hearing accessibility. And then we recommend that people take their masks off to facilitate lip reading. So these are the ways that we are using a social model in our own congregation to help increase accessibility. People with disabilities were effectively barred from many locations until the passage of the American with Disabilities Act, or ADA, in 1990. Many, many years of organizing went on before that to get this milestone of an act passed. The ADA requires spaces to have equal access across a variety of disabilities, and it has greatly improved the lives of disabled people. City building codes were required to change and continue to change to adapt to new, more accessible technologies. That's why our building has all this state-of-the-art stuff: the wide ramps, accessible bathrooms, push-to-open doors, and things like that. We take these adaptations for granted. They've been around for a while, but in the days past, they would have been considered too costly to bother with. When I reached out to members of our fellowship community with disabilities to ask them how I could think about this service, I heard from Carolyn Elliott, who has deformities in both of her hands. She wrote, "As a former English teacher, I always had a stack of books or papers with me. Opening those round knobbed doors was a bit of a challenge. The day all the knobs in the building were switched to levers, I nearly jumped for joy. Levers were not something that I had thought of, but somebody did, and they installed them. My life got immediately easier. I really appreciate the ADA standards because they make life easier for everyone." Many of these adaptations that were required by the ADA have made life easier for people with disabilities and also for temporarily able-bodied people. The ADA mandated curb cuts, so now anyone with a stroller or a shopping cart has a much easier time crossing the street. The ADA mandated elevators, so anyone traveling upstairs with groceries now has a much easier time getting where they need to go. This is called universal design, when engineers create things with a particular group of people in mind that then has benefits for more than that they were imagining or seeking to serve. In other words, there's so many ways that we all can benefit from adaptations, and sometimes we don't know it until we're in the space where we have them. So today I noticed, honestly, just this morning I noticed that Pajama Day, which was a playful enticement to come to the fellowship today, was actually quite handy for me because I can put my pack in my pocket and my phone in the other one. So that's how the adaptation part works. Like, I would have never guessed that, but how much ease rather than the pack in the back of my head, the back of my jacket. Now, as I mentioned last week, each time we gather, we are, in fact, a new community, and we don't know who will be at our door. But consciously or unconsciously, people are asking themselves, do I belong here? And belonging is such a vital and important part of our lives, our spiritual lives, and our sense of well-being. Now, as an aside, like everything else, language varies and terms change over time. I've learned that the disability community is moving away with terms like people with disabilities, which I'm so used to saying, and reclaiming terms like deaf people, autistic people, and the like. In a workshop on inclusivity that I took this summer, I recently learned the term diverse embodiments. Diverse embodiments. Rather than able-bodied, which is the normative body, and disabled versus non-normative. Because in fact, as I've just said before, everybody is actually temporarily able-bodied. None of us knows when it might be that we are not able-bodied or able to do the things that we had done before. And the normative state changes based on place and context. I am definitely a diverse embodiment if I'm hanging around at an Ironman triathlon. No doubt. And I'm thinking about people who live at places like Fraser Meadows, where the normative becomes more of people who are more frail, walk more slowly, versus people who are hanging out on a playground. So we have to be able to kind of imagine how normative is a false construct to box for everybody. And it can be difficult to be the person with the need, who is with a need to have to out themselves, especially in a new setting where they're wondering if they belong. And especially if their need is invisible, or also, I will say not especially, also if their need is invisible. So some things that are easily done is asking a whole group, not just a person with a noticeable difference, what can we do to help you have the best experience here today? What a beautiful and opening question. We actually asked something similar at our retreat yesterday, and someone who is immunocompromised said, I would really prefer if everybody tested in the morning before we came. And we were able to put that request out. And we have tests here for people who don't have tests at home. So that's the way to be thinking about how do we expand our welcome, widen our diversity in ways that more people can feel, yes, I belong here. Now, going back to the overalls party, Betty adapted, and she adapted quite creatively when she noticed that her little brother didn't have overalls. That's inclusion. That would be called inclusion. She figured out a way to include him. Radical inclusion would be for Betty to have an extra set of overalls in case someone else came who didn't have overalls, so they could feel welcome and included. And it wasn't until I was driving here this morning that I thought, oh, I should have brought extra bathrobes or asked people to bring extra bathrobes. So my apologies to anybody who would have wanted to wear a bathrobe today and does not feel included. Like, that's where I want my mind to go. Now, preemptive radical inclusion asks us to say that everyone is already and always in the room. And so you have to keep expanding that everybody. We're not going to wait for that. We are going to try to live at that horizon, the horizon that says we're not there yet. So not just looking who's coming up the walk and can we, make it work for them, but who haven't we thought of yet? Who haven't we seen yet here? So more and more people who do come into our walk, into our space, into our Zoom space, into our sphere of influence, can say, yes, I belong here. So many people are searching for that feeling of belonging. It is the best gift we can offer somebody in their life, to find a community they belong to. Now, I don't want to pretend that living on the horizon isn't tiring, because never reaching the destination is exhausting. Living at the horizon requires a willingness to constantly adapt, even when we can't see our own personal benefit to that constant adaptation. It requires forward thinking and the humility when we miss the mark, and the grace of everyone, and the hard choices when we notice that we haven't reached the capacity we would want, that we haven't been able to get to everyone in the room is already there, and we just don't have the capacity yet. We do so much already here, and I really want to lift up how our orientation is in that direction. We do require mics, we project words as often as we can. We pay attention to the roomies and the zoomies as best we can. We recently had someone give tips to our service associates in their training for how to speak more effectively so people could be heard, someone who is hard of hearing. We have fidgets for people. If you can't just sit, then you need something with your hands, we have fidgets right outside the door. And I always want to know, what would make this the best experience for you today? And I want us to have part of the answer to that is, how can we, the community, make that for you? I truly hope that we are creating an open and inviting experience where people can feel at least our willingness to meet those needs, and we can enable everyone to participate to their fullest ability. with their hearing aids, with their walkers and their wheelchairs, with their fidgety hands, with their racing or their depressed minds, in their Sunday best or in their PJs. That's my hope and prayer, because this kind of inclusion enriches all of us. One of the ways we create our community and learn about each other and our needs is through our sharing of joys and concerns. So it's a very powerful weekly ritual we have. And now is the time where we would invite you to come forward. If you have a joy or a concern that you'd like to share, Ilya will hand you the mic. And you can briefly tell us your name and where you live, and then tell us, briefly share your joy or your concern. Those of you on Zoom, write them in the chat, and I will read them at the end, and Ilya will put a stone into our sacred waters on your behalf. And then I'm going to ask you to put a few more stones in for me, please. Could you put one stone in for all of the people of the Ukraine, the incredible suffering that continues to happen there, that seems without end? And another stone in for our earth, just for our earth, and all the ways that we are approaching, all the ways that the devastation is happening and the changes that are happening so rapidly. And for those of us who feel it in our hearts and in our bodies, and who long to make a change. And one last stone for all of those joys and concerns that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, knowing even in our silence, we are bound together in the web of life. Some of my best prayer time is early in the morning, so maybe this will kind of be helpful. You can imagine me. Oh, beloveds, we are seeking to live on the horizon of inclusion. The invitation to open our hearts wider and wider, to look beyond what is right in front of us, and to look to what could be coming towards us. That's not an easy place to live, but it is the calling of our faith. The beauty of this space and this horizon is we are doing it hand in hand. We are not alone. We are a people of faith who recognize the inherent worth and dignity of all beings. And through that, we are called to this sort of living. Let us be gracious with ourselves and with each other when we fumble. Let us be open-armed to those we never imagined what their needs might be, and seek to together provide them. And let us do that to our own capacity, recognizing that each of us has needs of our own, visible and invisible, griefs we carry with us, challenges we carry with us. So in this dance at the horizon, may we be nimble and generous with ourselves and each other, gracious for all we encounter, with love at our center. May this be our promise and our prayer as we journey together as a beloved community. Blessed be.
We are going to sing together one more time. This is love will guide us, which I'm so sorry, my papers are not in the right place. There we go. Number 131 in the gray hymnal. And again, please do rise in body or in spirit if you would like. Number 131 in the gray hymnal. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak with us, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
I have a few announcements for this morning. Yesterday we had our leadership retreat here in our building, and the theme was the power of fun, or being alive in community. And part of what we did was there's a sun, you'll see, being alive in community, and people put stickies on that sun about moments when they felt like their time in the fellowship was so fun. Like, not just like fun, but like so fun. So you are invited, those of you who are in the room are invited when you go into Fellowship Hall for a coffee hour to add a little sticky about moments that were so fun for you. And those of you who are on Zoom are welcome to stay. We'll be showing the video that we showed yesterday from Catherine Price called The Power of Fun. And the benefits, it's all about the benefits of having fun. And having some Q&A afterwards. And we'll make sure some of those materials also go out on our listserv. And I have been asked to say, ahoy mateys. I'm not in the right outfit for that. But that the Blue Boat auction is on the horizon. There's an offshore online event that starts on Sunday, November 13th. And the party in port will be on Saturday, November 19th. Stop by the auction table in the Fellowship Hall, excuse me, after the service to learn a little bit more about how you can contribute to the Blue Boat bounty. And keep an eye on your email for more information. Excuse me. I probably use it. And finally, if anyone is interested in membership or just curious to learn more about the fellowship, we do have a Path to Membership class next Saturday from 9 to 12. And Rosemary Arp, who's raising her hand over there.
Okay, there are no more announcements, so I'm going to extinguish the chalice. Please join me as I say these words together. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Thank you. I'll keep going. All right. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Please consider how we can live in a healthy way that feels safe, sustainable, caring for both ourselves and all the members of our community as we live between our hearts and the horizon. Thank you. Go in peace. Amen. Namaste. You okay?